Welcome and good morning to another episode of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Isabel and I'm here with my friend Karina, who's going to be controlling all of the magic on screen that you see behind me here. If you have any questions or would like to interact with us throughout the program, we highly encourage you to do so. Feel free to text any questions to 562-286-1838, or if you're watching after the fact, you can always email us at live@lbaop.org. So this is supposed to be an interactive experience, so if you want us to touch a bit more on one thing, feel free to let us know any questions that you might have. Now today, we are going to be doing some counting, but before we do so, I'd like us to warm up our brains with one of our webcams here. Does anybody see any animals in this webcam? Now this is live from one of our exhibits here at the aquarium. Does anybody see any animals that they recognize? I see some movement over here. And I see the little waddle that they do. You can copy the waddle if you have space there at home. And if you said penguin, you would be correct. And if you said Magellanic penguin, you would be even more correct, and I would be very impressed. But these are Magellanic penguins that we have here at our aquarium. And I see only one here so far. But I'm also noticing the colors, right? And these, noticing our colors, our shapes, and counting are examples of what we call observations. And that's a big part of science, right? Scientific observations means using your senses, your eyeballs, your ears, your sense of touch to essentially describe the things that are around you, right? And in this case, I think we have one of our penguins. Now, we will check back in on our penguins later, but if you have been able to keep up so far, we're starting with one, right, of our penguins, and we will see if we can continue on counting our animals. So as Karina switches to an animal behind me, I'd like us to either tell maybe a person in the room around us or text them in how many of that animal that you see. And it's going to get progressively harder as we go. And then maybe what you notice about that animal or how you knew that that animal was that animal, right? What things you saw that gave it away. So I'm going to leave it up to Karina. What is going to be our first animal that we are going to be counting today? Ooh, beautiful video of this animal who seems to be using their flippers to move through the water. I see only one so far. So if you said one sea turtle, you would be correct. We have one green sea turtle and one diver in the background towards the end of that video as well. But our sea turtles are recognizable, right? Because mostly of that shell that they have, right? Shells are a really awesome thing to have as an animal for, what do we think? Why would an animal want to have a shell? Would it be so that they can eat or not be eaten, right? It's for protection. And in fact, I do have one of my sea turtle shells here with me. This one is a slightly different species than the one that's on screen behind me. This is a hawksbill sea turtle. And if I flip it around, you can actually see where the animal's bones would have been attached to the shell. So they're not quite like a hermit crab or other kinds of animals that can, go out of their shell, or like other sea turtle or land turtles, that can actually hide inside of their shells. It is fused with their bodies, right? So they will never lose that shell. Does anybody notice how our sea turtles are moving, right? If you are at home, you can show me by using your flippers, right? You can see they're flapping them almost like a bird scooping through the water. Our sea turtles, they don't really have fins or other things that we might see on animals in the ocean, but instead we see two big front flippers in the front here and then some smaller ones in the back. All right, so pretty easy to start with because we only had one, but I think we might be ready to move on to the next one if you are. All right, Karina, let's see what we got. Oh, one of my favorite animals that we have here at the aquarium, but these ones are from outside of our aquarium. These are some wild animals that are very fluffy, that have some very crafty little paws. Let's see. Does anybody know what these animals are and how many of them we have? Now the video's looped back around, but these are the same two sea otters that we have. In fact, we have a mom and a baby. These were filmed by my friend Sarah out in Morro Bay, a little bit more north in California than we are here in Long Beach at the aquarium. And these are a way that our sea otters are going to feed themselves, right? So these are a pair of mom and baby that are eating, looks like maybe some crab right now, and they are using their little paws. Now, I have a model of a sea otter with me, and this is roughly about the size that they can get. And here's another close-up of our otters as well. They are just adorable, but their fluffiness isn't just for cuteness. It actually serves a very important purpose, which is to keep their bodies warm, right? It's the same reason why we have hair on our heads or on our arms, is for warmth, right? It's not just for style, but it's also something that defines us from other animals. It's what makes us mammals, right? So both our sea otters and us, we are mammals, meaning that we have hair on our bodies or fur, and that we also take care of our young, right? When you were a baby, did your mom immediately send you out and say, good luck, go find food on your own, right? It's time to get a job. No. Our sea otters are going to do similar things that our human mothers do, which is going to be taking care of them and teaching them how to, be an otter, right? And so that's something that is a really amazing thing that our mammals do, which kind of sets them apart from some of our other animals that we see, like our sea turtle, right? Those sea turtles, when they lay their eggs, mom leaves and says, good luck, kiddos. Hope you make it, right? But our otters will stick together, at least for the first few months of the pup's life. Awesome. Okay, we've got 2 otters, 1 sea turtle. Let's see what we've got next. What can we count next? Ooh, I recognize this animal, maybe from a very famous movie that you might have seen before. If you shouted out Nemo, that would be the name of that character, but does anybody know what kind of animal Nemo is? Because right now I'm seeing, how many Nemos do we see? They can't all be Nemo if we see more than one, right? So let's see, I'm counting 1, 2, and then you might have missed this one down here, 3 of our clownfish is what Nemo is actually based on, is a clownfish. And clownfish are very beautiful fish. They have bright, vibrant colors, oftentimes having stripes, and we actually have lots and lots of different kinds of clownfish. So not all of them are going to look exactly like Nemo. But what all of them do share is the ability to live in an environment that not many other animals or fish can withstand. Does anybody see these shapes down here? What could this be? What are our fish swimming in right now? If you said a sea anemone, you would be correct, right? These are the wiggly tentacles of our sea anemones that they use to catch their food, right? And those tentacles are going to have stinging cells on them, right? So if they can sting, wouldn't these fish here be getting stung by the anemone's tentacles? Well, that's where our clownfish have a very special, what we call adaptation, or a bodily feature that an animal has to help them survive. And that adaptation is a layer of mucus or slime covering their scales so that they don't get stung, right? And yeah, here's another example of different looking clownfish or anemone fish, right? And there's lots of different species, so not all of them are going to look like Nemo, but they have that ability to swim amongst our anemone's tentacles, just like this one here, right? So other fish in this situation would be feeling that sting, but in this case, our clownfish is able to have a safe home inside of the anemone. This way, other fish can't come, eat them or anything because they have that protection of the anemone. And this actually also benefits the anemone, believe it or not. It's a mutually beneficial relationship because the anemone gets like a security team from the clownfish, right? The clownfish are going to chase away other animals. They tend to be, a little bossy sometimes, and they'll scare off or chase away other animals that might want to eat that anemone. So it kind of goes both ways where they're each protecting each other, right? So it's a pretty cool relationship, one of many mutually beneficial relationships that we see in the ocean. And in this case, here's another good close-up. Some of these fish can be really small sometimes, but their size is going to really depend on their species. And so this is real close-up. Those tentacles are pretty small as well. Awesome. Okay, so we had our 1 sea turtle, our 2 sea otters, and 3 clownfish. Let's see what Karina has in store for us to count next. Ooh, okay. So, for this animal, we have a lot of them going on here. So, maybe we don't count the animals, but instead, do we see these little flower shapes that are on our moon jelly here? Yeah, does anybody know what those might be? Are they just pretty? They're actually their stomachs. Imagine if you had 4 stomachs. I would be able to eat so much more ice cream, chicken nuggets, pizza, and be very happy to have more stomach space, right? I would never get full. But for our moon jellies, right, they are going to have these 1, 2, 3, 4 stomachs. Let's see if that's the case for all of our moon jellies. Let's see about this one back here. How many stomachs do you see on this one, right? And those stomachs are going to be these little white curvy lines here. And on this jelly, I see another 4 stomachs, right? If you said 4, you would be correct. But you might also be saying, wait a second, I've come to the aquarium and I've been at the jelly touch pool and I've seen some of them have more, or some of them only have 2 or 3. And you'd be correct. That is a very common what we call mutation among our jellies, where just sometimes they're born with more or less stomachs. And it doesn't really affect them too much, right? Maybe if you have more stomachs, you'd be able to eat more, maybe grow a little bit bigger, but it really, is just something that happens all the time among moon jellies, right? So I've seen anywhere from 2 up to 8, but sometimes apparently there can be even as many as 10, right? So if you ever come to the aquarium or see moon jellies out in the wild, you can take a closer look and see how many stomachs does this guy have, and does that mean that maybe they can eat more or less? How does that affect their size, right? That is one of the kind of scientific predictions that we can make using our observations, right? Like counting. So awesome job on counting our moon jelly stomachs, right? Our moon jellies are going to have very different bodies than us. I have another kind of jelly model here, and you're going to notice that there's actually 2 different kinds of tentacles, right? Can we guess? Are they using the thin ones or the thick ones to sting their food, right? Which ones would you get stung by if you were to touch them? If you said the outside ones, you'd actually be correct, right? Because this is where the food is going to be floating and hitting those tentacles that will get stung. And then once it's stung and caught on those tentacles, the inside ones, which are called the oral arms, are going to scoop them up and bring them into the jelly's mouth, which is on the bottom here. Yeah, this is a Japanese sea nettle, which is very similar to the one that I'm holding, just a different color, right? And so these tentacles are in the middle are more like arms, right? Because they don't have stingers. They instead are just helping them grab their food and bring it into their mouth like our arms do. So that's an adaptation or body part that we actually have in common with our jellies. They just look very different and they don't have any bones in their arms. Awesome job. Okay, so we have 4 moon jelly stomachs. We had 3 clownfish, 2 otters, 1 sea turtle. Let's see what we have in store next. Ooh, does anybody recognize this animal? Once again, if you recognize them, you can text us how many of the arms that we see, right? Because we've only got one of this animal, but we have several different arms. Will you count them with me? Let's see. How many arms do we have on our sea star? I see 1 here, 2 here, 3 down here, another 4 over here, and 5 this one here. Our sea star has 5 arms. This is an ochre star here, and most of them are going to have those 5 arms, but sometimes they might have more, sometimes they might have less, right? It's another thing that it can be common among our sea stars, but sometimes it's not always something that they're born with, right? Sometimes a sea star will actually lose an arm. Oh my gosh. They are able to survive and in fact regrow their arms, but sometimes they're like, I didn't need that arm anyways, and they just keep 4, right? Or sometimes even less. But generally you'll see about 5 arms on our sea stars, but sometimes they might grow an extra one. Sometimes you might see 6 arms. Or if you're looking at a sun star or a sunflower sea star, you might be seeing like 20 arms, right? And so here is a tide pool, an example of the habitat that our sea stars call home, and you can see all the different kinds of sea stars, right? So we have more of those ochre stars that looked very similar to the picture that we just saw, right? Especially this one here, that's that orange bright color, but some of them might be more kind of pink or purple. And we also have some over here that have a different color of spines. These are called our giant blue spine stars. And then we even have one right here, kind of looks like Patrick's star, right? That is our bat star. So we have lots of different kinds of sea stars, but even on our bat stars, you can see how many arms do they have. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on our bat star. Awesome. And that's kind of why we call them a sea star, right? Is because they have that star shape. Those 5 points are how we think of stars having 5 points, right? Especially on my model here, you can see just how much of a star it tends to look like. And if I flip them over, you'll actually see we have all these lovely, what we call tube feet, right? Now, they don't actually look like this, but if you look very closely, like on this one down here, you can see maybe there's some of their tube feet, which are tiny little suction cups that they use to crawl around very slowly. Oh, we have a perfect video here of those tube feet, a close-up. You can see they're very, very sticky and are what allow our sea stars to climb and stick to rocks, as well as grab their food, too. Now, I think it would be impossible to count all of those tube feet, right? Especially if you're looking at a larger sea star. But they tend to have maybe sometimes hundreds of them, maybe even more, right? Because they have them all over their bodies and they use them to crawl around, just like this video here. All right, very good job, guys. We are making our way through. We've had, right, our 5-armed sea star, our 4 moon jelly stomachs, our 3 clownfish, 2 otters, and 1 sea turtle. Let's see what else we have next. I think you might be catching on to a pattern here. So this is an animal, right, that we have here at the aquarium that their body looks very different than the rest. Let's see if Karina's got one. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see how many of this animal we see kind of popping their heads up and down. If you are getting the answer already, awesome. I'm going to count with you. We've got 1 right here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these are our garden eels. We have 6 garden eels here showing off how they catch their food, right? So these are actually fish, even though they don't look like a normal fish, right? Typically when we think of fish, we have fins like these ones, or, we have a side fin, a tail, a big fin on top maybe. But yeah, if you look closely at our garden eels, do we see any fins on them? No, but it makes them, this is what makes them special, right? Their body is going to be very slender and able to bob up and down very easily. So you can practice your garden moves if you are at home watching. And yeah, exactly, just like this. And as the food is floating by in the water, they're catching it with their mouth, right? So you can see they're hunting whatever is floating, which is oftentimes an animal that we call plankton, right? Very small little animals that drift through the water. In this case, it's probably some kind of brine shrimp, if I were to guess. So our garden eels, they're going to have those very slender bodies that they bob up and down, right, in order to catch their food. And you might have also noticed something else on their bodies as well. What can we see here? Lots and lots of spots. Now, I'm not going to count all of the little ones, but I see some bigger ones here. Can we count how many bigger ones we see? I see one big one here and one big one up here. So 2 of these larger spots. Why would an animal want to have spots like this, right? It seems like it's kind of helping them blend in with the rocky background here, but these ones stand out a lot more. And they are what we call a false eye spot. Now, lots and lots of animals have these, both in the water and on land, right? And they are essentially tricking their predators into thinking their eyeballs are much bigger than they actually are, right? If you look up here, their eyeballs are super small. But this spot down here is making their eyeballs look bigger, and even if they're not facing you, it makes it look like they're looking right at you and that they see you. So a predator is going to think, oh my gosh, they see me already. I'm not going to sneak up on them. And so that's another way that they can help protect themselves, right, as an adaptation. And so if you see that false eye spot, usually a very large, dark, round circle on an animal, you can say, I know that animal is trying to be a trickster, right? Trying to trick me into thinking that maybe it's a bigger animal than it already is and that it sees me, and so I can't sneak up on it, right? Lots of different animals have these, and so you might notice them like on our epaulet sharks here at the aquarium. So, awesome job counting our garden eels and their false eye spots. We had 6 of them in that video. Let's see what we can have next for our next number. Ooh, very good. Okay, so you might have already noticed that we only have one of our sharks here, but this is a very special shark. And so what I'd like us to count for this shark is how many gills we see, right? So how many of those gills, which are going to be on the side of their body, do you notice? Okay, I'll count together with you. I see, starting from this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 gills on our shark. Now, if you are a shark expert, you might be saying, wait a minute, I know sharks only have 5 gills. There are a couple exceptions to this, and this is one of them, which is known as the 7-gill shark. You can see where they get their name from, right? Because they have some special extra gills. Does anybody know what those gills help a shark do? If you know, feel free to let us know using that number or that email. What would a shark possibly be doing with those gills? If you said breathing, especially underwater, you'd be correct, right? Once again, another difference between animals like fish and mammals is that we breathe air, right? Does anybody have any gills at home? Feel free to feel the side of your neck. You feel any gills there? I sure hope not. Because we actually have lungs and we use our nose and our mouth to breathe. So you can take a deep breath if you're at home. Filling your lungs with air versus a shark. They're actually going to be breathing pretty much constantly as they're moving, as that water passes over those gills and gives them oxygen that way. So, awesome job counting the gills on our shark, on our 7-gill shark. But I think we have time for one last animal. And let's see what Karina has for us next, right? So we had our 7-gill shark, our 6 garden eels, our 5 sea star arms, 4 moon jelly stomachs, 3 clownfish, 2 otters, and 1 sea turtle. Let's see what we've got next. Our octopus, specifically the giant Pacific octopus. And once again, we only have one of this animal, but I like us to have an additional challenge of counting the arms or tentacles that you see on our octopus. Now, some of you guys at home might already know how many arms or tentacles octopus have, but let's count together to make sure that this one has all of their arms and didn't maybe lose one on the way or somehow grow an extra one. So let's see. We've got 1 big one here, 2 down here, 3 over here. You might have missed one. There's a 4th one kind of hiding in the back right here. So this is going to be number 4. And then 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 arms on our octopus, right? So that's kind of where we get that name octopus. Octo means 8, as in like an octagon has 8 sides. So that's how you know our octopus should always have those 8 arms or tentacles. And arms and tentacles can be interchangeable, but we tend to call them arms on an octopus for science because they have those suction cups all over them that they use to grab their food, right? So they function more similarly to arms like we have, which is to grab things or to move around, right, as well. But so a little bit different than a tentacle like on our anemones that they use to sting, right? So you can call them tentacles or arms, but more technically correct would be to say arms. So we've got our 8 arms on our octopus. You guys did such an awesome job counting all the way down from 1 up to 8. Let's check back in on our penguins as a way to close out and see if we have any more of those in just a moment. But just to recap, right, we have our 8 octopus arms, 7 gills on a 7-gilled shark, our 6 garden eels, 5 sea star arms, 4 moon jelly stomachs, 3 clownfish, 2 otters, and 1 sea turtle. It's like seeing if I could remember all of those, but repeating them each time really honed it in. So let's see if we can check back in on the animals that we started with. Oh my gosh, there's so many more than when we first looked, right? When we first looked, we only saw 1 penguin, but now that you guys are counting experts, can you count how many penguins we have here with us? They're kind of moving, so it might be a little hard, right? But I see, of course, probably the one that we started with back here. 2, 3, 4, one little head down here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and is there 12? Yeah, 12. I was like, did I count this guy already? No, I didn't. So 12 penguins here on our exhibit right now, which is awesome. They are finally recovering from their molting season, right? Our penguins, they undergo what we call a catastrophic molt, right? So you might be familiar with molting. Crabs will molt their shells, or other, birds will molt their feathers. Our penguins, they're going to shed all of their feathers all at once. And so without having that, fluffy winter coat of feathers, they're going to be a little bit grumpy and not going to want to swim around or feed as much, right? But our penguins have finally gotten through their molting season, and so they finally have some brand new feathers, brand new shiny coat that they will use for the rest of the year, right? For winter, to protect their bodies and keep themselves warm. And I can see by the way that they're moving right now, I think they're going to be making some pretty loud cawing noises that we call braying, right? Kind of like a donkey does. And they're showing off just how fierce they are, right? Because they are not to be to be messed with. And so once again, if you are at home and you have the space, you can show me how you would caw as a penguin or how you would waddle around using your arm flippers, right? So we've looked at a lot of different animals and how they might move, right? And our penguins are going to use those flippers and their feet to waddle around. But you guys, you have arms and legs, so Thank you so much for coming on in and hanging out with me at today's Aquarium Online Academy. If you're watching after the fact, you can use your arms and your fingers to email us any questions at live@lbaop.org. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be live again at 10 o'clock, so we'll hope to see you then. Thank you, and bye-bye.